The Ojibwe Nation, the Anishinaabe Nation, in our language, we call ourselves Anishinaabe, and the word means we were lowered onto the land by the Creator, and that is the way we see ourselves. Traditionally, the people were lived in clan systems. They lived under a government of clan systems, but they had individual rights and individual responsibilities.
Good morning, Roseau River.
Roseau River was part of the Pembina Bands. It was known as Pembina Bands before 1871. And Pembina Bands was about at least 1,100 people in this area. And Roseau's traditional territory is in this map here. We had 3,000 square miles of land, 2 million acres in southern Manitoba is what was traditional, was more or less recognized by the other First Nations as our traditional territory, as Roseau River's traditional territory.
On August 3rd, 1871, the Roseau River Anishinaabe, along with several other First Nations in southern Manitoba, entered into treaty with the British Crown. For the First Nations, this is a sacred agreement, with their inherent rights guaranteed for as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the rivers flow.
You know, one of the important things about our Indian people, the way we dealt with people was based on truth. And that's how we look at the treaty, you know. The white man, when he made the deal, he spoke the truth, you know. And, same thing with us Indians, we still maintain our treaty. And so that's where this pipe came in, you know. And that's how our people look at it, you know, it's important. These are sacred agreements.
At the time of the treaty, this land we retained for ourselves, and the land was never given to us. It was just land that we retained for ourselves. And the immigrants had no land to give us because they had no land anyway, like they had nothing.
You know, even though the government of Canada sees it differently, we did not sell our land. We allowed them to exist on this land. We just did not roll off a log and sign a treaty in 1871. It was almost a 3-year process in order to get all the people of the Pembina Anishinaabe to agree to that treaty.
As our entitlement under the terms and conditions of Treaty 1, we had about 14,600 some odd acres. We were assured that that land would be ours in perpetuity. We were starting to get involved in agriculture, but that we were still relying on the hunt. We needed to hunt deer, fur-bearing animals for cash, so we can buy the basic necessities for home. So that transition was taking place. Shortly after the treaty that was signed in 1871, the Department of Indian Affairs, with pressure from the local communities like Emerson, Dominion City, and L'Italier, wanted the agricultural land that we had negotiated and settled as the Roseau River Anishinaabe First Nation. But the local communities pushed the Government of Canada and the Department of Indian Affairs, along with the local Member of Parliament, to get the land surrendered and move us either to the Broken Head River or to the Lake of the Woods. The majority of the people, over a period of about between 20 and 30 years, had consistently and steadfastly refused to surrender any of the land. They were threatened that the department would in fact take the land and evict us from our reserve and put us someplace else without any compensation whatsoever if we did not surrender the land. So our elders then at that time, I guess they felt they had no choice, so I guess they, rather than being evicted from our own reserve, they decided that it would be best to sell a small portion of it. So they ended up selling 12 sections of land. It was 8,000 some odd acres.
We believed that, that land couldn't be sold. But the government had papers done. The chief and council signing an agreement to sell that land. If we talk about the Jackrabbit Bridge up here, that's where our land starts now. Today's land that's on this side, it's west of that river. But at the time of treaty, we owned land on both sides of that river. One of the stories that my uncle used to tell me was that, when one of his relatives was coming out of his, in the morning, out of his cabin or where it was lodged, he was shot, and we don't know who shot him. They tell us it's white people that shot him to get him off their land.
We felt that our elders, and in fact our people today too as well, feel that we had made that solemn promise in 1871 and a solemn deal between the Crown that land would never be taken. In fact, our elders indicated and stated that they didn't want no white man to come in and take our land, and that the negotiators of the treaty had agreed to that.
There was a huge corruption in the Indian Affairs Department. There was money being tracked right directly to the head of the Indian Affairs in Ottawa. He not only did fraudulent land surrenders here in Manitoba, but he also did. Once he practiced on us, he went to Saskatchewan and Alberta, and they just the history of these people just absolutely running roughshod over anybody and reserves, and they just profited. They just profiteered on us.
That part of our history, our people suffered greatly at the hands of the white people.
Our population stayed dormant. In fact, it dwindled during that period of time. After the land was taken from us, there's a lot of agricultural potential on that land, any of the lands along the Red River, in fact, and that the opportunities weren't there, so we could have been actually richer than it.